This is the first talk of the February 90 7-day retreat in Springwater. Most people who are here this morning have been to retreat before, maybe to many of them for many years. And yet not just for the sake of someone who is here for the first time, but for all of us, including myself. It's important to say right at the beginning something about listening to a talk, giving a talk, listening, questioning together. The danger of announcing it or saying it is that the mind says, this has been repeated so many times, why do I have to hear it again or say it again? Let's get on to something new and different. But saying things or hearing things, even for the 100th time, doesn't mean that something changes in us. Just hearing someone say, don't listen as to an authority, making the words, internalizing the words as an inner authority to follow. Just hearing someone talk about it and warn about it doesn't mean it doesn't continue. That we do hear what is said as authority, that we do try to conform or follow, or that we don't even hear what is being said because of previous authority imprinted on the mind and the brain. Because of previous authority imprinted in the mind, our listening is already affected by it. Affected in a way that when something is said and there is an invitation to question it, not to take it on authority, to find out for oneself whether it is so or not. In hearing something said, the mind hears, this is what I should do. And if I don't do it, I'm not up to par. I'm not doing the right thing. Or I can't do it, therefore, feeling of inferior worth, depressed, discouraged. Because what she says, I can't do. But in talking about what goes on in this mind and body and in our relationship with each other, with the world, with nature, in talking about that, it is an invitation to look as we relate, as we listen, as we ruminate, fantasize, talk to ourselves endlessly, to listen to it, to become aware of it. not as something that shouldn't be or should be better or different or not altogether be there, but as what is just happening this instant, inside and out. And an open listening and open seeing, which is not judgmental, which does not bring up authoritarian or previous authority, or what one has thought was authority. Do it this way, don't do it that way. This is good, this is bad. To listen free of that, is that possible? So just what is happening this instant is clearly revealed and need not be reacted to. We're saying, not do it, but is it possible? If I remember correctly, I used to ask many more questions, put things much more in question form, which I may be doing less of these days. Because many people got very irritated at being constantly bombarded with questions. There's still enough of them coming up, but say something, somebody would say. You make a statement with your questions anyways, which is not necessarily true. It is an interpretation of the receiving mind. What is questioned is already a statement. But if statements are made, they need not be incorporated as something that is so, even though this is what the mind has been learned and conditioned over centuries and centuries to do. To hear something and keep it there, either seeing immediately, yes, this is so, or it isn't so, or if it isn't seen to be so or not so, to keep wondering about it. And because the mind has not concluded about it right or wrong, it is carried as a question. And maybe something is illumined at a point when something happens that is being talked about. Yeah, this is so, it isn't so. And one sees something. And at that moment it's not dead information. Is something alive because it's happening. And it is the aliveness of the insight, or the seeing, that is life-giving, not the particular content of having just thought this or done that, but the fact that it is illumined, seen, that there is something new taking place. Seeing something directly for oneself. Which seems so closed to us. Because we've been taught, and everyone around us, almost everyone around us, doesn't question very deeply. One questions in terms of, is this right or wrong? His opinion versus my opinion. His background versus my background. And in that there is a lot of divergence, argument, confrontation, either becoming convinced or convincing someone else, or never getting together on a difference of opinions. This is the very nature of opinions. That they are tied to limited background. All of our backgrounds are limited. And they differ. Not just, in their limitation they're the same, but in their content they differ. And all of our personalities differ. We've all come through some different molding, shaping, genetic, environmental educative, etc. process. All of us have come through a different one. We have different investments. Although sometimes people's investments are very similar, so they gravitate toward each other to support each other in the sameness of their outlook or conditioning or background, family, race, ideology, religion, and so forth. But what we're trying to find out here and asking indefatigably, whether in spite of our varying and different backgrounds, different for each one of us, but the same in that we all have them. We all represent this different background. That's the same for all of us. Background is different, but it is so for each one of us. Whether in spite of that, and the pressure of that, there can be a meeting on a completely different ground, in which the differences between you and me, personality-wise, background-wise, function-wise, one person functions as this, another person as that, in which these differences are irrelevant. It's an enormous question to ask right at the beginning of a retreat, isn't it? Whether in spite of our varying conditioning, cultural, ethnic, racial, familiar, societal, cultural, education, heredity-wise, in spite of the vast differences in that from one human being to another, such differently shaped and differently conditioned human beings, you and me, not out there someplace in the farthest corner of the world, but right here. Although what goes for right here also goes for the farthest corner of the world. Whether there can be a meeting on common ground, which is not shared opinion or background. A common ground which is what? None of what has been listed repetitively here a few times, none of that is part of that conditioned, a part of that common ground. None of the conditioning. And it is not separating. When you and I are communicating from that common ground, or are speaking out of that, if we put it that way carefully, it's probably not a completely adequate description, then there's no separation between you and me. No matter how different our personality may be, or sex and all the differences that we all represent and have and manifest. It is when there's a maybe even just momentary touching of this common ground, then the listening is open and unbiased, uninvested, not concerned with me being right or wrong, being offended or insulted or slighted or flattered and pleased. That in that common background, there is no me. That's in our different upbringing, in our personality, the way we live from moment to moment. The common factor there is the me, different from one person to the other, and yet the same. Protective, aggressive, easily irritated or angry or pleased, wanting more pleasure, more security, wanting security. What's so totally insecure in all of us, this whole built-up structure of me, is constantly demanding security. And spends tremendous energy, effort, time in making itself secure, always to be frustrated again at one point or another. Something happens, and fears come up, anxiety, anger, insecurity, helplessness. So at what moment in this ongoing process that we're all involved in, adding to the me, trying to make it secure, protecting it, defending it, trying to make it bigger or better or smaller, more modest, more humble, in this ongoing effort in human beings, the world over, throughout time, at what instant can there be an insight into that which does not come from that same level, therefore not judgmental, fearful, wanting? Just like the sun breaking through thick cloud cover and illuminating. Everything that's there. Mud, little new green grasses, old weeds, trash, people, animals, ruts from years and years below, left in the ground. Everything illuminated when the sun comes through the clouds. This borders on inspirational talk, doesn't it? One hears it and maybe thinks I can take hope that the sun will illumine all what's inside, trash and all. And can one observe as something becomes or is felt as inspirational, the thought, the idea in the mind, and the instant physical response? So quick that usually there's just the feeling of the response. What thought triggered it is already lost. It didn't come into awareness. But it can come into awareness that an inspiring thought or message, as heard, triggers a sense of well-being, energy throughout the body. and then wanting to incorporate that message, hang on to it, repeat it to oneself. Try to fulfill or seek according to it. Can that all be observed so that it doesn't get lost? Usually these things get lost. We're inattentive, we're not aware, we're dreaming about something, or thinking, planning, worrying. What will happen to me or my family? And yet all of these things intermittently go on. Is one learning about oneself every once in a while? Freshly, cleanly as it were. Cleanly meaning, just here it is. That's just what happened. Without a chain reaction of, this is good, this is bad. And the chain reaction coming so fast when there's no awareness. That too can be seen. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what is seen, but that there's some seeing matters a lot. Because our life in thought and reaction and habitual, conditioned behavior takes a sudden turn or has a sudden breakthrough. Has something alive, some directness of perception. Which seems to release the energy that was held in no perception. And therefore just thinking about something, imaging it, and having a lot of opinions about it. Prejudice. Whatever. So does this make sense, that to listen to each other here in a talk, and I'm listening too, I'm not just talking, there's listening going on. A memory may come up of what somebody said, the feeling of that enters into what is being said. Does it make sense to enter into this talking, listening, speaking, exploring on a common ground? Not on the assumption which lies very deep. Cannot assume that one doesn't have this assumption, that there is an authority whose words have weight. She's telling me what to do. We may not say that to ourselves, but we do it, or we fight it, because we don't want to be told what to do. And what is missed is this common inquiry. In which we share as, I said yesterday, as friends, you can say as equals, but all of these words have associations. It's hard to find a word. But if it happens, then it's quite clear the tremendous thing of that, inquiring and looking together. Not to pronounce something or inculcate something or convince somebody of something, but to find out alone or together what is happening each moment. Each moment, not just of sitting on a mat and looking with more intensity than we usually do as we move about our daily life. But as we move about our daily life, to look, to listen to the habits. It's so difficult to become aware of them because they are habits. Habits means they've been running and running and running. And this is what is a function of the brain and organism, to establish habits so we don't have to find out every time whether something is dangerous, survival threatening. To be able to take a cue from something that is remembered and act on the remembrance. And there are still times in our life, every day, where this needs to come into action as we pass a busy street, cross a busy street of traffic. Handle dangerous materials like saw or hot stuff, to know from memory the danger of not being careful. But the deep habits of defending ourselves, not our physical well-being and functioning, but the idea of me, which we don't realize as we're defending is just an idea. The assumption, the deep assumption is it is me as I live and need to live. Defend it from attack from others. And the attack can have such a subtle nature, just somebody knowing something more can be a threat. Because having habitually grown up to need to know as much as everybody else does, or the power of knowledge and the fear of having to relinquish this to someone else who has more knowledge. See, as we're saying these things, I'm probing around myself. I may not think of the whole thing, and somebody may feel, well, there's much more to it than that. And I'm not denying that. I'm interested in it. Bring it up in meetings to add information to the feeling of power when we have knowledge, or feeling disempowered by somebody who has more or seems to brag about it, insist upon it. The effect of that person's field on my field. In giving a talk, I can never say the whole thing, and I don't know the whole thing. Somebody else, that's why it's so good if we have a good group discussion. People can add missing parts to a picture, a psychological picture. Never, even though in talking only parts can be mentioned, aspects. I'm not insisting that this is the whole thing, or that I know it all, or that I may not be put it differently if I had different information. But what is happening, what we're doing, is to come from a common ground of listening, in which we're not invested in the information per se, but trying to find out of looking and listening freshly, uninvestedly, at what is going on in us. And as it turns out, having talked about it, or talking about it openly like this, or in meetings and group discussions, or in friendly conversations someplace, around the kitchen table, wherever one may find oneself with a friend who is interested in finding out. Talking about this loosens the ground. By ground, I don't mean here this common ground I've mentioned, but like the earth being worked by the farmer, by the machinery, to open it up to receive seed and rain and sun. If the ground is hard clay, not worked, no humus worked into it, then seeds in the first rainfall just drain off, don't even enter. Some of them do. Maybe find a crack, but most of them, if you put lawn seed like a new lawn keeper who doesn't know anything about this, has no experience with it, just puts seed out, dismayed to see it all in the gutter the next day after a rain. Where actually, if the gutter in the street, gutter meaning close to the sidewalk, I'm talking from looking at a suburban lawn, because we've been through all that with our lawn efforts at the beginning, seeding when there was no working on the ground. Near the sidewalk, there may be some leaves and other dirt washed off, and there some of those washed off seeds may sprout, because the soil is right. It happens often in very unexpected places. So to the question of someone who asked in an interested, open way, not perfunctorily, what am I doing here? What is it all about sitting here? Can you say something about that? What are we doing as we're sitting here? The thought from previous conditioning is, what should I be doing here? The assumption being, I should do something. Because we always have assumed if we go someplace and enter into some kind of what seems a system, we have to do something. Somebody who does all the talking is the one to ask, what should I do here? That's what happens. It's understandable. And the question arises, not what should I do, but what are we doing? What is happening this instant of sitting reasonably quietly? I forgot to say that during a talk, it doesn't hold the same as we ask for a round of sitting, not to move for a talk. Please move if you feel cramped or tense in a certain position, to change the position quietly, which people are doing. So that is fine with a talk, in a talk. So, the person wasn't asking about the talk particularly, and we have already talked about listening in a talk, but as one sits on the mat, on the cushions, on the chair, here or on the balcony or in the dining room, maybe someplace outside if it's not too cold, what is going on? Not what should I be doing. If that question comes up, can it be illumined? the question, what should I be doing? Which is an old, ancient question haunting us. I should be doing something. I have to ask someone in charge what I should be doing. Can that in itself be illumined with all its impact? The uncertainty of not knowing what to do, the discomfort of uncertainty. We don't feel comfortable when we don't know what to do or what we should do. We haven't been told, we haven't been given instructions yet. So there is this dis-ease of the feeling as a beginner, as an outsider. Everybody else seems to go right ahead and do something. They are in the know, they're experienced, and so much is happening that one can observe. There's a division between others who are not beginners and myself who is a beginner. A certain value placed on other people who seem to know what they're doing. Value according to our learning, condition, structure of advanced, superior and inferior, beginner. The attitudes and ways of thinking and approaching someone of whom one thinks he or she is advanced. They fear how one will be seen, a shyness, fear of maybe being looked down on or not treated with respect, with the same respect in which one treats the advanced one. One doesn't even expect it for oneself, but that feels uncomfortable. And with this discomfort, a yearning to join the ranks of the respected, of those who know what they're doing. I'm just sort of spinning it out for us to look, whether this is in fact what happens. Or something like that. I'm not pronouncing categorically this is the process. But there is a process, isn't there? There's very little precedence, or none, in our life until we start something like this, sitting meditation. Very little precedence for sitting down and not knowing what to do. Or, it's not properly put as precedence for not knowing what to do, but that this is all right. And to investigate this not knowing what to do, not to try to get out of it as quickly as possible by knowing what to do, but to have that in itself a field of inquiry. What is going on? And we have described some things, the dis-ease, unrest, discomfort, ideas, wanting, desire, what one wants to become, and so forth. To be with that, to see it happening, is that at all possible? As one just starts out on this. Not to let the thought take over, this can only be possible if I've done this for years, but to, right here and now, listen inwardly and outwardly to what's actually happening. The light on the eyelids is brilliantly bright, the warmth on the body. There's breathing going on, isn't there? Maybe very, very quietly, hidden. Sometimes the breath is very hidden. Sometimes it's very palpable. needs to take a deep breath for whatever reason. Or some anxious thought has entered the mind, the breath may be choppy. And then there may be the thought, if I was doing this right, I would know how to breathe yogically. And wanting to have deep breathing. Sometimes the breathing is deep on its own. So can the breath be left alone from ideas of how it should or should not be, and just perceived as it is? Not as breath, but as something happening in this vast field of now, of nowness, here-ness. Some of us have learned to give the breath a special priority, to fix on that to the exclusion of other things. If that's what one wishes to do, is up to each one. But there can be awareness of this breath without giving it any particular special notice. When the mind is open to listen, look, touch, feel, without any prescribed focus. And the movement of cloth and body on the pillow. Some faint bird calls. The light on the eyelids, the warmth on the body. Maybe a pain in the knee, shoulder, back. The heart beating quietly or noisily, whichever way, it doesn't matter. All of that is of this field of nowness. The words are not the actual. What is the actual as words dominate the mind, and the mind tries to grab onto words, to understand through understanding words. That's going on. And the listening. Words may come up, but the listening needs no words. Words may dominate, and then there's a moment of listening without words, the sound of someone moving. The light in the room, the warmth, the pain in the knee, the breathing. Some undefinable feelings in the body, sensations. Can that just be there in total simplicity, without making a thing out of it, without naming it, knowing it, wanting more of it or wanting less of it? The wanting itself perceived as part of this moment, wanting something. The idea and the motion toward that idea, physically palpable. See, here, we're not talking about opinion or belief, are we? We're looking. And the thoughts that come up in you or me may differ. But thoughts are coming up. Can they be seen? no matter what their content, what their instant effect, for someone a high, for someone a low. For someone wanting something and for someone else not wanting something. That differs, but the listening envelops it all, doesn't it? And does not create a division between you and me just because thoughts arising in this mind may be different from a thought arising in that mind. That needs to create no division between us, unless that's where we fixate. That's the level from which we proceed and argue, fight, or align ourselves. If there's anything in a talk which you remember immediately or will crop up later that you would like to go over again or question what was said, question further, whatever, could you bring it to a meeting? That's one function of meetings. We don't have a discussion period right after a talk. We have at times discussed this. Some people have been in favor of, but on the whole there has been mostly a consensus not to have that in a retreat. But there are meetings, and sometimes people are apologetic about having written down things that they bring as nothing that needs apology. I have to write down myself what people have asked, so it isn't forgotten and can be brought up in the next talk. And with this, if people need to discuss further or go over it, start from scratch, with this, this whole being together comes alive. The questions that move all of us are looked at by all of us in a talk. Which does not mean, please don't misunderstand, it does not mean that you have to bring a question like homework. It doesn't. Sometimes something crops up right in the middle of silence and just sitting together in the meeting. Not everybody has to have a question or may have a question. So, not to feel pressure, but to look at pressure as it habitually exerts itself in this mind and body, and to learn as one looks in a retreat with the intensity that builds up in energy, to look at pressure. I should be doing this. Others are bringing questions. What does she think of me? Or if I bring her a question, she will like me. One thinks that, and then one assumes what one thinks is so. It may not be so. If no one has a question, there'll still be a talk from something that moves human beings the world over and in this very room. What we're asking in all simplicity is, can what moves us darkly unawares be brought to light? Be seen as it is, non-judgmentally. non-divisively. We'll have to see. We can all look and listen, can't we? We will end here for today.